All right, this is Burn the Ship podcast. Thank you for coming. I wanted to say that very first. Anybody that sets the time apart to be here, it means a lot to me. So thank you for that. Our goal of Burn the Ship podcast is to connect entrepreneurs or professionals that can help you go all in on your business. We talk to people that have walked the walk, talked the talk, been through and experienced all the things that we experience as small business owners. In hopes that we can bottle up some of those experiences and skills and teach them to that next generation of entrepreneurs, right? We've been very fortunate. We've heard a lot of stories. We've talked about a lot of different things, and we've learned a lot from a bunch of different people. And recently, you may have noticed I have not as many people are from Atlanta, right? I think that being in Atlanta and living in the city of millions and millions of people, you really focus on different things. You may be more focused on marketing, but I think when you step outside of those really, really large markets, you put such a focus on delivering a quality product and nurturing your relationships with the people that are existing clients. And so that's what I hope to, maybe over the next month or so, these interviews really put out the aura that, what we find valuable is nurturing and maintaining those relationships with clients, and that people are very, very focused on delivering a quality product for people for a fair price, especially outside of Atlanta, where the market's a little bit less saturated and you have a little bit more competitive advantage as long as you can do a really good job. So that's kind of the name of the game over the next month. Hope you follow along and I hope you enjoy it. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Mr. Mark? I appreciate you being here and
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about your business.
certainly. Mark Davis. I'm a commercial and industrial photographer and videographer. And in a short sentence, I provide marketing visual images to many of the world's largest corporate brands.
And tell me a story, right? Because I don't think step one for anybody in the business world is that. So, how did you get into
Yeah.
this, and how did you start kind of acquiring those large commercial clients?
Well, how I got into photography is kind of interesting. My mother worked for NASA at the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama during the Apollo moon mission. She worked in the photo department. And one summer, probably 10, 12 years old, she carries me to work with her. And one of the photographers carried me in the dark room, and I saw a print develop in the dark room. And photography has been my thing since. So there's really power in nurturing these types of things with children, whatever the profession may be. It leaves a lasting impression on them. But I just became consumed with photography at that point. And of course, I'm middle school, high school. I read every book I can find. I didn't have a professional camera at the time, but we'll fast forward. I got a job at a metropolitan newspaper, a daily newspaper that was award winning, and worked there for 11 years. And not only did I win awards there, but I was exposed to, gosh, I'd photograph a homeless person in the morning and maybe the governor in the afternoon. At lunchtime, I may stop by one of the local car dealerships and photograph 25 cars to go in a Sunday ad for the paper. And so that really gave me the diversification um, to to shoot just about anything as far as photographically goes. And so that's what I did. And then when I quit working at the newspaper, at the time I opened a photography studio, and I did weddings and portraits and pets and class reunions and commercial work, and I did everything. But did a lot of sports. I really experienced as a sports action photographer. But when my daughter was born, 2001, about 99, I decided to get away from doing sports action because that's a lot of weekend work. And I just kind of focused in on what can I do that's weekday work that minimizes my time away from home. And I decided I wanted to start doing commercial and industrial type work. And it just, kind of took off from there. So, and that's all I do now. I don't do weddings. I'm not set up for portraiture other than executive headshots and that type of thing. So,
Sure. So, what was that
yeah.
large commercial client that you first got into that because it's describe those clients who they're engineering or manufacturing firms, or what do your clients actually look like?
Well, when I had my photography studio before drones came about, I used to do a lot of aerial photography, out of a Cessna 172. And advertising is real important for any small business. Um, and the biggest mistake that I see small businesses make, and I made these too, is I'd run an ad for a week and I wouldn't get any calls off of it. Your advertising has got to be consistent over a period of time. You got to build that up in order for it to be effective. But at that time, I would run advertisements, direct mail postcards saying, hey, once a month, I go up and do aerial photography. If you want me to photograph your plant, your manufacturing facility, call me. And so I would have clients call me up and say, hey, we need some aerial photography. And sometimes they'd call me up and they'd say, hey, we're on a deadline and we need this next week. Okay, I can go up tomorrow, but I can't do the special pricing because it's custom. And
Hmm.
sometimes those clients would pay that extra money to do that, but most of them would say, okay, just whenever. And so I would build up. In the corporate world, it's really difficult to get in front of the customer. It's not like in a retail establishment where you can walk in the front door and ask to speak to the owner. Direct mail marketing does really good. And some people in business, uh, small business people, individuals like myself may not know this, but you can purchase list um, for say a clientele that's the large corporations. If you want to focus your business on realtors and do mom and pop type things, you can buy a list just to locate your local realtors. And so that's kind of how I built that up. And then after that, it was kind of word of mouth. I'd have people call me up and I'd say, how did you find out about me? And they'd say, well, you know, uh, John over at so and so company recommended you. And so it just kind of built up that way. And since Google came out, I do a lot of Google AdWords advertising. And I get a lot of business for people searching for, um, you know, need, like I'll give you an example. Last summer, I spent 9 days in Dallas, and the client was in St. Louis, or no, they were in Kansas City, and had me to photographing these industrial doors, and the client told me, she said, we can't find anybody in the Dallas market that does what you do. And so that gets to a point to where if there's a photographer or videographer watching this and want to really establish themselves, they really need to focus on, um, if you want to do weddings and do it well. If you want to photograph pets, do pets and do it well. Exceed your client's expectations. Whatever, if you want to do real estate photos of homes, do it and do it well. And focus on that one subject matter and become an expert at it, because people want specialists. And that's I guess a good piece of advice I'll give people. But word of mouth, direct mail, and then the Google AdWords works out really well.
Sure. And so, what would you say as you're kind of building this portfolio of people that you've worked with? Is that a tight enough knit group of people where they're referring you to other decision makers in the commercial space, or do they mostly kind of live thinking about their own thing? Or
It varies. I've had some clients that my contact with the company worked for company A. She may have worked there for a year. She moved to company B. She calls me up at company B. Then she may go up the ladder herself or himself, to company C or D, and they still use me. But the first three companies, I keep marketing to those people, even though I know the person's left. Sometimes I have more than one contact there. So, and so all of a sudden I've got four clients because one client has changed jobs three times. But it's because they trust me. They know that I'm going to do what I say that I'm going to do. When I deliver the images, it's going to exceed their expectations.
sure,
And that happens. And I have a saying that I tell clients. I like to get what I call the money shot. And I may shoot 75 photographs and they're all good, but there's going to be two or three that I would call the money shot. The other images may have an application, maybe not for marketing, maybe for in-house use, that type of thing. So, but it goes back to um, being the expert at what you're doing is you really got to study your craft, and it's really hard to do that because the wedding market is so different than say pets or real estate, and it's really difficult. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's difficult to hone your craft if you're doing several different genres of photography or video at one time. Um, and there's some things that I do to my photography. I know that you've seen my website, that I do some proprietary adjustments to them that make them look as good as what they do. And I've actually had clients say, "Hey, tell me how you did that." And I'm like, "No, I'm not telling you because you wouldn't hire me."
Sure.
you know? And so you need to establish a style, that sets yourself above. I don't know. I failed to tell you this, but I taught photography at the college level as an adjunct for 8 years. And I really focused on the business aspects of photography, and I would tell my students, you've got to do something that set yourself above what everybody else is doing, because with digital cameras today, there's an abundance of people out there that are photographers and videographers that um, maybe they're marketing their services, and maybe they're really good business people, but they haven't really studied the photography, the exposures, and that type of thing. And so, but if you're providing, and it doesn't matter if it's photography or whatever it is, if you provide a quality product, clients are going to come to you.
Yeah,
It's
for
just
sure.
kind of as simple as that. So,
For sure. And I think is really why, like, that's the biggest difference in what I wanted to focus on talking about, because in your world, right, you develop this style and you develop this certain value to your clients that it's hard to replicate, right?
mm-hmm,
And in Atlanta, because there's so many people, all right, and there's so many photographers and there's so many videographers and there's so many people promoting services that they outsource, that the market is much more saturated, right? And so a lot of people move away from what can I do most uniquely. You know what I mean? What can I do that separates myself from the pack? And they fall into this trap of trying to outmarket the people around them, or reach out to more people, or grow a social media following, or whatever that may be, right? And my thought process is so different. I think because of the saturation of the Atlanta market and all of these services makes it doubly important to find that thing that makes you as unique as possible. Like, you have to find the thing that makes you stand out amongst the people that you stand with in your industry, right? Whether you're in a small market or a large market, I think that's one of the most important things, because people have to understand the value that you bring to them versus the value that someone else brings to them in a simple way. They almost have to be able to explain it in two sentences to their boss, or whoever's writing the check or whoever's signing it. You know what I mean? They have to
yeah.
explain it in a way that just makes logical sense. And if it's not quality or experience, well, then the issue becomes price. Now it's like we all live in a cul-de-sac and we all have a lawnmower and we all want to cut each other's grass. It's like, okay, there's going to come
Mm-hmm.
to a point where, you're going to whittle yourself out of it even being worth any money if you continue to just drop the price, drop the price, drop the price. So I think that's a lot of what the Atlanta market is experiencing. But then you see some of those people that have taken that to heart, of like, whatever it is that I know a couple of people that just photograph food, right? And their style is so
Certainly.
unique. You know what I mean? Like, what they do is so unique that they have no shortcoming of business, even when a market is saturated in Atlanta, without marketing as hard as a lot of those other people. So I think if there was anything to focus on, it's that thing right there, is like, find a way to be unique and offer a unique experience to your clients. And then you don't have to constantly have that conversation of like, well, I'm cheaper than my neighbor, you know what I mean? Or whatever that may be. A way to find your superpower is just to find what you're really, really good at, you know what I mean? And overcome a lot of those obstacles and work really hard to get to a place where you feel that you can say, I do a good job, with conviction to people. I think that's super, super important. And it's just easier to articulate, and it's a lot more visible when you're outside of this 20 million people in Atlanta market. You know what I mean? Maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but in Atlanta, we get it shoved down our throats. There's a million people that do what you do, and people are quoting and price shopping and all those things. But if you find a way to be unique, it's almost like Yeah, but it's not the same.
Nobody else matters.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Nobody else matters. If you do something better than everybody else, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. There's a couple of things that come to mind with your comments. Is that one of the biggest things that I see about creative people is they they're excited because it's fun. You've got the camera equipment, you get to go to these fun places. And that is I pinch myself sometimes that I get paid to do what I get to do. But as a aspect of that as well, though, there's a formula in business called cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times I have talked to younger people that I ask them, what is your cost of doing business? And they're like, what are you talking about? I don't know. Well, see, I know what my bottom line's got to be for me to walk out the door to make a profit. And I just know that. And what my bottom line is and what your bottom line is would be different. Because, I mean, there's some photographers that, they've got helicopters and they want to drive BMWs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But their cost of doing business is going to be different than mine. And so, but these people out here they're all concerned about the money. And of course, money is important, but you've got to know your cost. And one of the things, I mean, my being an educator, I still to this day like to educate people. And I had a guy on a Facebook page a year ago that he was wanting to borrow. He had a drone, he did aerial photography, and he wanted to borrow a camera because his client wanted some ground shots done and he didn't have a camera to do it. And so I reached out to him. I said, hey, let me talk to you. Well, he flat out told me, he said, I don't have the money to buy a camera. Well, the reason he didn't have the money to buy a camera is because he wasn't charging enough. He never even gave any thought about. And so I also tell creatives too, if you're really good at photography, take some business classes, because you got to be good at business too. You've got all kind of hidden fees and things that you got. And but I see a lot of young people, when I try to give them advice, they don't even want to listen to it. And if that's the case, that's fine. But I've always been the kind of person. I'll tell you a quick story. I was in the Smoky Mountains one time at sunset, and I drive up, and there's this old man in a van, and he's out there waiting for the sun to go down. And I get out and I do the same thing. And the first thing he says is, he was a grumpy old man. He says, I'm not talking to you. I'm like, why? Well, I know you're going to know all my secrets, and I'm not going to give you my secrets. I said, man, I know my own secrets. I don't. So 30 minutes later, we're talking. But I'm like a sponge, and when people that's more experienced than me tell me stuff, I soak it up. And sometimes I see young people not doing that, and that's kind of disheartening, because I do see a saturated market in a lot of areas. That it's really saturated right now, but in 2 or 3 years from now, those people are going to move on and do something else. They're going to say, I can't make a living doing this. And and the client is going to take advantage of those low prices if they're low. But I also know that I have talked to clients that have told me, hey, if I get 3 estimates and one guy is $3,000 lower than the other two, then I know that person's not experienced, and I'm not going to hire them, because I want somebody that's going to come in and do a bang up job. And so I'll look at estimates, but I want them to be relative to one another. And sometimes these newer folks, they don't know that, and they don't want to listen to it. And I wish they would, but
Yeah, no, it's
maybe
definitely
somebody
true.
listening to this will learn something, that would be awesome. So
Well, we're fortunate because most of the people that tune into our and it's not millions of people, you know what I mean? Tell your friends about Burn the Ship so we can
it'll
get there
build
one
up.
day. But there, everybody, and why we keep putting this out is because everybody that looks for our content is looking to soak that information in a very specific way. They're looking for answers to a specific question. And you probably have people on both sides of the coin. I'm a talented photographer. I don't know enough about the business side. Or I know about the business side and I'm curious how these people articulate their service in a way that sets good expectations for their clients, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
why it's so easy to come and sit in front of this camera and sit in front of this microphone, is that I completely agree with you. I talk to people all the time that their cup is so full that they can't hear the things that you're trying to do to be beneficial, to be valuable to them. And that is okay with me. You know what I mean? Because I'm the same as you. I have always been that sponge. Like
Yeah,
I've said
yeah,
it over and over again on the podcast, and people are probably tired of hearing it. But like my company, from a credit card processing perspective, I could never pay them back for the amount of skills that I've accumulated, getting to walk into thousands and thousands and thousands of businesses and figure out what they do well and figure out what they do poorly. There is no way that I could replicate that experience doing basically anything else in my life that has still been profitable for me and my company. But no matter if they made $1 million off me or $1 billion off of me, the experience that I've accumulated by being able to walk into all of these businesses and apply a logical solution that makes their business better has taught me so freaking much. And it's literally just from learning how to listen, learning how to listen to what people's actual pain is. They
yeah,
may present their pain one way, but their pain may be actually something different. And something that's always true, we all want more clients or better clients, or we want to change the way that we interact with our customers in some way or shape or form, whether it's more or it's different, right? And so that is one thing that I've been super excited about Burn the Ship, is that people seem to be soaking up the information. People seem to be reaching out to people that are guests and asking questions, especially when they're in their industry. And it's been a refreshing thing to me, because I couldn't agree with you more. There are tons of people, they leave school or they leave a sales job to go to another sales job, and their cup is just very full about what they understand in their industry. And I'm thankful that we don't experience quite that same thing with our existing network. Let me ask you this. What
certainly.
are some of the largest obstacles that you've overcome, right? We talked a little bit about what you did well, kind of your superpower, but like, if people are early on in this venture, what are some of the roadblocks that they can expect to have to overcome early on? What were some of the most difficult for you?
Well, gee, I'm trying to think. One of the biggest roadblocks is always trying to find the leads, the quality customers. And I know that you mentioned that probably early in this podcast, but when we were on the phone earlier about, how do I find clients? And I do have a specialty market in that. That's kind of a, you know, it amazes me that I have people calling me for business. But so and it's kind of a, I understand, because some of your viewers, if they're into photography and videography, they're going to say, well, if I don't have any samples to show my clients that I can do industrial work, how am I going to get the industrial clients to call me? And there's some truth to that. It's like when I did sports action photography, if you weren't photographing the University of Georgia football, how are you going to get a newspaper or a magazine to hire you to go to photograph a University of Georgia football game? And so, but one of the things that I've done is, I give you an example. In Birmingham, Alabama, there's a place called Sloss Furnace. It was a furnace back in the day, and it's kind of a museum now. But they've got all this industrial piping, and so I would go down there and I would take photographs of that and do some real artistic stuff to where you could not really tell that it was a closed down facility. I've actually stopped on the side of the highway where I saw some big old huge, those big chrome gas line pipes coming out of the ground, and photographed those. And so there's, here again, it goes back to perfecting your craft. There's all kind of ways that you can, create some things. If you go downtown to any city, if you go down a back alley, you're going to find something that looks industrial. And so building your portfolio was kind of that was kind of a problem for me early on. And now my problem is I shoot so much. I don't update my website as much as I should, because I just don't have the time to, I shoot some really awesome
Sure.
work, but I just stay so busy. I need to update it more than I do. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree that people find ways to let a lack of a portfolio hinder them. You know what I mean? There's opportunities to create everywhere around you. And it doesn't have to necessarily be exactly the thing that you're trying to sell to people. But you can create a lot of feedback and a lot of content just with what is going on around you. I would tell people is, if you need stuff to photograph or you need stuff to video, especially in Atlanta, we have tons of stuff that you can gain
Oh yeah,
experience from. There, I
yeah.
mean, even just within my office, like we do so many things where we're both out and about in the world and here creating content that there's ways that you can find ways around that if you need a good project to get you started or just to test your metal. You know what I mean? I think that's a valuable thing too. Is see how good it is and ask people objectively, do they think it's good or not? You know what I mean? I think that's another thing that holds people back. If you don't have feedback, if you don't have a way to acquire feedback from the people that are your peers or the people that you hope give you money, your life's going to be difficult. You know what I mean? You have to find a way to take that feedback and apply it positively and get better at what you do. Every industry in the world experiences some sort of learning curve or, pivot, as everyone loves the word pivot these days. It's like
Oh yeah, yeah.
you have to be a student of your craft. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason that professionals and everything spend so much time being a student of their crafts because they want to be the very best. And to be the very best, or at least just to render a quality service to someone, you have to have some feedback on what you do well and what you don't.
One project I did several years ago in Atlanta was International Plaza and Centennial Park. They removed the tungsten lighting from all the lights and put LEDs in. And so I had three companies go in together and hire me to photograph the before and after. And I went to 15 locations before and photographed the tungsten lighting. And then I went back 2 years later to the same spot and did the after. But during that time, they were also building the new dome over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember, although I was doing commercial type work, I would turn around behind me and I could see welders with sparks flying and cranes. And I actually photographed with a telephoto lens some of that because it was industrial. And I didn't have anything like that particular look. And so, but the thing of it is not only did I get some portfolio material from the paying assignment that I was doing of the park, I also got some filler industrial work by just going there and being, you just got to be minded, and you just got to put forth the effort. So,
For sure. Well, tell
yeah.
people if they want to ask you questions or if they want to buy something from you or whatever that looks like, how do they find you?
Well, I have a website, and here's something that's kind of interesting. When I started the website years ago, Google said that if you sold a product, if your domain name was the name of the product, they would rank you higher. So I did commercial and industrial photography. So my website is commercialindustrialphotographer.com. It's really long. As a matter of fact, about a year ago, I think Google limited the length of domains, and mine's too longer than what they're doing now, but it grandfathered in, it grandfathered in. And quite honestly, from a business standpoint, it would be fatal for me to change that.
For sure.
To change that domain, I got to leave it the same. I talked to Google about it, but sometimes when I do my AdWords advertising, a couple of letters of my domain gets cut off. But yeah, commercialindustrialphotographer.com. My contact information is on there. And one of the things that I want to tell, whether if it's, I would, if you got a client that needs some quality corporate work done, I'd be honored to do it for them. But also, if you've got a videographer or photographer out there that's up and coming and wanting to learn something, don't hesitate to reach out to those that are more experienced than you, but be honest about it. And what I mean by that is I always know in January I'll get 2 or 3 messages that they're pretending to need an assignment somewhere, and I'll call them up and they can't give me the details of what I really need to quote it, but really all they're doing is they're wanting to get an idea of what I charge.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just call me up and say, hey, Mark, I'm in Augusta, Georgia, and this is what I do. What do you think the going rates are for this? I don't mind telling folks and I just think that we're busy. There's several of us. There's probably 4 or 5 of us in the country that do what I do, and we're really busy. And I can't speak for the other people, but I know for myself, I don't mind educating folks. I don't mind giving them information, but it's really it really is a turnoff to me for somebody to call up and pretend to have a project and want to quote it, and then I get the details and come to find out. And I've done this for so long, I can usually weed that out on the telephone or even an email within a minute or so. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, tell me this. This is kind of the way that we kind of always end the podcast here.
certainly.
I appreciate you telling people to find some resources and maybe even being a resource yourself to people that have questions. But for those same people that are kind of kicking the can down the road or trying to understand when a good moment to jump all in on their business would be, can you describe to me just what that feeling is, right? Like, what is it like to commit to being a business owner and commit to solving the challenges that that presents? What type of fulfillment or just emotionally, what do you get out of something like that?
Well, starting out, it's really tough. It's one of the things isn't that I've told you about cost of doing business. There's actually a calculator online. It's free that somebody does. I think it's the National Press Photographers Association that you can go in and punch in all of your expenses, and it'll tell you what basically what your cost of doing business is. But the difficult part is like you got to divide that by how many projects you're going to do in a year. And when you're starting out, you know, you want to do 5 a month and you're only going to do one maybe every 6 or 8 weeks. And so how do you wrap all that around? And so that was one of the most difficult things to do is to figure out that cost because when I started my business, I remember reading it was really frightful that it said, and this was in 95, 96. So if you go out of business for yourself, that you got to have a minimum of like $90,000 in reserve. I didn't have $90,000.
No.
Well, would it have been nice to have had? Heck yeah, it would have been, but I didn't have it. And so um, basically what I did is I started out with it part time. You know, I worked a schedule where I worked nights, and so I could maybe go do a project in the morning, do it on Saturday, and I would build myself up. But here again, as I was building that up, I wanted to make sure I did a quality product and always deliver on time, always do what you're going to tell your clients you're going to do. And it just slowly builds up from there. But that's a really scary time when you're first starting out. But hopefully, if whatever business it is, you hear the term today, side hustle.
Yeah.
And that's like drone aerial photography. I'm a certified drone pilot, and I fly my drone quite a bit for my corporate projects. But I'm seeing a lot of people. I'm seeing a lot of clients call me up and say, "Hey, we need this drone job done." I had this come up last week. The project they wanted done was going to be about $2,000, and they only had $400 budgeted for it. And I said, "Why did you have that $400 budget?" And they said, "Well, the photographers that we used in the last 2 years only charged us $400." And I said, "Well, where's this guy now?" And he goes, "Well, he's gone out of business." Well, see, I know from being in business, I know why that guy's not there anymore. Um, but do your side hustle. I will tell you one of the things that really hurt me in my business when I first started. I had a full time job, and I thought, well, since I have a full time job, I'm not going to charge as much. I can charge less, but that was the wrong thing to do because when I went full time, I had to raise my prices. And then when I raised my prices, a bunch of my clients left me because my prices went up.
Sure.
And so just because you have this is a side hustle and you have another full-time job, you need to have your prices in line with what they would be if you're on your own. When I was teaching at the college, I had a photographer. She was really good. She came to me one day and she was crying. And I said, "What's wrong with you?" And she goes, "Mark, I'm married. I have 2 kids. I photograph weddings." She said, "This past Saturday, I did 5 weddings on a Saturday. I was late for 3 of them. And I'm having to work till 2 o'clock in the morning to get everything. And I'm just stressed." And I looked at her and I said, "Raise your prices."
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "What?" I said, "Raise your prices." "Oh, no, I can't do that. Nobody will hire me." I said, well, they're not going to be able to hire you anyway because the stress that you under is not going to be healthy for you in the long run. You're either going to get burnt out or you're going to be in the hospital. So, um, and so that's a way to know um, with the pricing. You know, if you're overworked, raise your prices,
Yeah.
and it'll balance out. And I know we're getting into kind of some deep business aspects here, but um, it saddens me though that I see so many talented photographers and videographers as well that they're awesome at what they do, but they don't know the business aspects of it, and they just get frustrated and burn out. And you know, like I know one guy, he went to work at a manager of a department store. Nothing wrong with being a manager of a department store, but he just got so burnt out. But it's because he didn't know how to. He was the business aspects of it. He didn't know how to do.
Sure. It's a normal
So
thing. And it's a
yeah,
it's a sliding scale, right? Like
yeah,
you have to spend time perfecting your craft. You have to spend time understanding the business side of it, and you have to find people that can help you with both of those things. And then and somewhere in the middle of all of that mixture of everything going on around you is what makes you you and what makes your product, you know? And it takes time and discipline to get to that place. You know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to find, but
you're right.
you have to go through the journey. And once you go through that journey, the fulfillment that you see on the other side of it, just to kind of link it back to that original question, is the gratification that you get from running your own business and solving those problems is a wonderful, wonderful thing. You know, it's a very different experience than what you feel out of a lot of things, and your business kind of becomes your baby, and you understand that you have to do right by your business. You have to set your prices in a way that makes sense for you, and you have to be willing to grow and deal with those ebbs and flows. And thankfully, people like yourself, people like me, and other people that are within my organization really are very focused on helping businesses solve problems because, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, damn, there's enough of them. You know what I mean? There's plenty of
Yeah,
them to solve.
yeah,
So, but I appreciate you being here. If you have anything to leave the audience with,
certainly.
please leave your final word. But that's
Yeah,
all the questions that I have, my friend. I'm excited and I appreciate you being
yeah,
here a lot. It does matter to me.
yeah. Well, I've watched several of your podcasts, and I like what you're doing. And what you're doing with your podcast is like it's just like a business. It's got to grow,
Hmm.
you know, and word, you know, more and more get out, and it'll grow. But I think, yeah, I'd like to see, I like to help people. You know, I like to see people be successful. Um, you know, I think there's enough business to go around. And but I want to see people willing to learn, you know, and that type of thing. And it amazes me, you know, a lot of, if you look at my images on my website, and I told a client this the other day, of every time I go into some of these places, technically it is such a challenge. Um, I think I might have mentioned this to you before. I was at a sawmill, an automated sawmill back in October, where they use robots to stack the lumber. And we the video production, and it was like snowing sawdust in there, and it was a really harsh environment. And I mean, and not only that, but you know, I'm wearing a hard hat, safety glasses, gloves. Sometimes I wear a harness, and so it's really technically challenging environment. But I would have never told the client, "Hey, yeah, I'll do this job," if I didn't think I could do it, because that's the worst thing you can do is go get yourself into doing something that you've not practiced on before. But even with my 30 years experience, it was technically a challenge, and it came out really, really nice. Um, and so, but you've got to practice all that. You know, say, well, one of your viewers may say, well, I never had an opportunity to go on a sawmill. No, but you know, you can go outside and film in the rain. Find a way to film in the rain or film in the snow. You know, you and do some creative things that way. There's all kind of a way to do things, but it does. It's a I'm really I'm honored, and I'm really a lucky man to get to do the stuff that I do. It just it amazes me, some of the things that I get to do and I get to see. But at the same time, it's hard work and it's a challenge. And I used to have a friend years ago. He called me Easy Money, because of the job that I had. And I mean, I get to do some fun things, but it's a challenge sometimes as well.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure. The amount that you
yeah,
sweat doesn't always equate to the amount that you work hard. I'll tell you that. That's something
yeah,
I've learned over the years. But I appreciate you coming on the podcast, my friend.
okay,
Like I said,
yeah,
and especially anybody that volunteers to be an asset to the people that are listening, it does mean a lot. So if there's anything that we can do for you as well, whether it's video or content or
okay,
photo or payments related or anything else like that,
okay,
or people in your people in your network, please just let us know. We're here to be of value to
okay,
you. It's one of our core values. One of the things that's most important to us is finding ways to be valuable to people that are experiencing the same things we're experiencing. And small business is tough right now. It's tough all the time, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right now we have our work cut out for us. So I appreciate you being
All right,
on, and I look forward to
yeah.
doing it again. Truthfully.
All right, yeah, I'll be honored to. Okay,
All
have a
right.
great
Thank you,
day.
sir.